Hey, everybody, and welcome to the ACE Football Academy. Coach Hamilton alongside Coach Dunham as always. Coach, this is the Friday Footy Talk, which I think it is safe to say you and I have both enjoyed doing. We just literally.
Well, Coach, we always talk soccer.
I know.
This made the most sense. And like you said, we might as well just start recording as soon as I walk in the door.
Really.
We're merely just brainstorming things.
And that's what we're doing in these Friday Footy Talks. It is, hey, the topic that has come to mind throughout the week. Maybe you and I have experienced something, and we're just like, hey, this is a great conversation. So tonight, Coach, we're going to talk training sessions. You and I are both in the middle of winter training. I think a lot of clubs would agree with us that that's what they're doing as well. Everybody's gearing up for that spring season, that spring kickoff. There are some players that are playing volleyball. There are some players that are playing indoor. You got lots of things going on right now. So I thought it would be fun to just discuss training in general. And let's start with where we are right now with I guess you would call this off-season training. I guess we're not in season yet.
Yeah,
so during the off-season training, but you are having scheduled sessions. It's not drop-ins. It is, hey, we're running this night, this day, this hour, this 2 hours. So let's start there. As a coach, in these off-season sessions, so let's just say January and February, you're going to meet with your team 6 to 12 times. And, that gives you once or twice a week for 2 months, ultimately. Yep. As a coach, when you go into those, do you have a session in mind? Are you, what is your thought? I'm just going to leave it very open-ended. What is your game plan as you enter these off-season trainings?
I think the number one thing that coaches need to keep in mind is age specific. What I do with a bunch of 15-year-olds is very different what I'm going to do with a bunch of 10-year-olds. And that's just skill level that we're dealing with. So if I'm working with an academy age group up through, 10, 11-year-olds, I'm doing a lot of ball work, simple ball work, core drills, ball mastery, simple dribbling drills. The Ronaldinho drill comes to mind. And then I'm going to play in some simple first touch and passing drills. Basically, I'm pounding on the fundamentals of the game. Passing, receiving, dribbling, shooting, the simple stuff like that they've got to master. Now, if I'm working on 12-year-olds and up, I'm focusing on game scenarios right off the bat. Now, I'm probably doing a few, ball mastery type stuff, some technical things of that matter, but a majority of my training is game scenarios. I start every practice, let me phrase that, 12 and up. Right now I'm doing an 09 girls. So they're 15, 16-year-old girls are, freshman and sophomore in high school. I start every drill with a rondo. It's a 4v1, it's a 5v2, it's a 6v3, some kind of variation there. I'll change the size of the box. I'll change the touch restrictions, and whatever it may be. But every practice I've run, I'm starting with a rondo. And then after that, I'm kind of expanding that rondo into a bigger rondo to where I've got perimeter players, internal defenders, but I also have an internal attacking neutral.
Okay.
And the object is to perimeter players to work that ball around, get it into the middle attacker, and play it back out to the perimeter, and just keep that ball moving. We're finding splits, heads on a swivel. We're not ball hawking the entire time. And then after that, I'm getting into, maybe some 4v4 scrimmages, some full field scrimmages, whatever have the room for where we're at. Now, on the opposite side of that, if I'm working 8 to 10-year-olds, I'm doing a lot of technical drills, and I'm adding in some light defensive pressure as we go along. They need to learn not only to proper passing technique, but proper technique under pressure. And then you got to end every practice, regardless of age group, with scrimmaging. They've got to play. If you had a focus on a practice where, hey, we're working on the wings today, I want to see wing playing in my scrimmage. If we focused on shooting or splits, I want to see that in my scrimmage. Yeah. So we're emphasizing what the theme was of that day. But I think the biggest thing I want to start my conversation with is my training is based off of age-specific type of training.
So I'm just gonna ultimately, and if we get to me, great. If we don't, that's okay too. We'll do it next week.
Yeah, fire away.
So I'm just gonna interview you ultimately. Is what we're gonna do here. So you mentioned, you mentioned your rondos, and even with those 8-year-olds, what do they want to do? They want to play. So I think starting with rondos at any age is great. Even if it's just like hey, we're gonna play 4v1 keep away. Like, right. Hey, make sure that guy in the gray doesn't get the ball and go. Right. I think that's a great way to start any training session at any age.
Yeah.
So let me swing it back to your older girls, and I do want to come back to your younger age groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's start with the older group. That's where you started, so that's where I'll start.
Okay.
Do you have so where we are, rosters can fluctuate, but they're not a huge difference. You may add a player or two, you may lose a player or two, but especially in that fall to spring season, you know what you got, you know what's coming back, sure. Right? Yeah. So for you, when you mentioned if we're working to get the ball to the wings, if we're working, whatever, the splits or whatever it is, do you also have those scenarios in mind, or does that come from your first play of rondo, right? So I'm a big proponent of the play, practice, play mentality, where they show up and they're going to play. And then, so I guess my question is, do you watch them play and you're like, oh man, we are really missing the split? You mentioned the split earlier. We're really missing that opportunity to split the defense and really ultimately attack. Or, so you do it like that, or do you go into it going, hey, we're going to start with a rondo, but ultimately my session is going to be about finding the split or finding the run?
Great point. So now that I'm working with an older group, we have gone over our attacking strategy. I got on a whiteboard, things on offense, defense. This is how we're going to work the ball. And each practice, we're going to break it down from working it through the back, through the wings, So they understand what our philosophy is when we're attacking. And my practices are based off of that.
Okay.
So, my very first week, we worked on my back line, swinging around the back, getting it to the wing, and as few passes in as little time as possible. And then the next week, we worked on from the backs. So it was just the back line. The following week, I included the wings, and so now we've got the back line working up to the wings. And then we worked on, all right, the wings got the ball. Are they getting it? Are they taking that player on 1v1? Are they looking for the combo with the center mid? And then we're working on how am I getting the ball to the striker? So we're working on the movements. We're working on the starting positions where they need to be. Working on the cues on when we make those runs. We're looking at what the defense is doing as far as what decisions I'm making. Hey, if the defender is going this direction, my touch needs to go here. One of the things that we're working on is if the wing gets the ball and they're by that first defender, you're attacking the near side center back. Okay? Now, the question is, what happens when the center back comes out of position to take you on?
Which is what you want.
What are your options?
Yeah.
What are you doing if that defender is dropping as you're attacking? What are your options? And what are you looking for? And so we explain that all on the whiteboard. And then my trainings are going through and breaking each of those functionals down. How the back line works with the wings, how the wings work with the mids, how the mids are finding the strikers, and how they're looking for options and what they're looking for as far as what the defense is giving them. So my trainings are based off of our attacking strategy. Now, that's not going to happen with 8 to 10 and 8 and 11-year-olds because they're not there yet.
So here's what I love about Coach Dunham, and he and I have been working together for a long time. What I like about this is we're talking about our off-season training, and yet Coach Dunham is already training for the season, right?
Oh,
He's got a group that is already there. He's already working toward what we're going to do when March does hit, when April does hit, and we're playing games.
Right.
Especially with that older group. And again, we'll cycle back to me and how I've changed in that philosophy if we have time, and if not, we'll do it next week. But let's talk about the younger kids. So it the soccer community has gotten to a point where you mentioned technical training a lot when you talked about the younger kids.
Of course, yeah.
Which I agree with. But our soccer community has gotten to a point to where, the overview is, well, they should be getting their technical work through the game, right? They should be getting their technical work
And there's truth to
through the 4v2s and the 5v3s and whatever. That's where the technical work should be coming from. So when you talk about technical work with your younger age groups, are you envisioning doing that through those rondos, through those 4v1s and things like that? Or are you having ultimately if you have 12 girls at or 12 boys at practice, everybody has a ball and we're all going to do, X, Y, and Z for the next 30 minutes. Like when you say technical training, what does that mean for you?
I think the first thing I want to get across here is no lines.
Correct.
I don't want 5 to 10 kids standing there with the ball at their feet while I got one kid doing dribbles through cones. And they all got to wait till he's done. I'm setting up 5 or 6 set of cones where it's 2 kids per line, where one kid goes, the next one immediately goes. So now they're all just cycling, just nonstop. And I can do this with agility drills. I can do this with speed training, with strength training, even at that younger ages.
Absolutely.
I can't stress this enough. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone to watch rec practices or, somebody else running their team, and they're doing a shooting drill. And they've got 10 kids in a single file line where they got one kid shooting, everybody says they're chit-chatting. You think they're engaged in what's going on in practice at 9 years old?
I'm so glad you brought that up because you even see that at the high school level, like especially pregame. Like, hey, we're going to get some shots on goal before the game. And what do they all do? They all run to the center line. They have one player standing in the middle who's going to distribute the ball. And then, and even if you do that for 10 minutes with a roster of 18, you're going to go twice, maybe 3 times?
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. I think no lines is the key there.
And the concept there is they learn from playing. They're not going to learn because Coach Hamilton is explaining something for 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
I keep referring back to watching rec teams. I remember a few years ago, I was at the field just walking around. It was, I think, the week before tournament play. And so coaches were really getting into it. And I was watching this one rec coach with, I think they were like 10 or 11-year-old girls. I sat there for 30 minutes of his practice, and he taught for 20 of it.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, those girls aren't going to remember a single word you said the moment they walk off that field. And so the concept that you want to get into is have a ball at their feet where they're, I guess the word is activated. They're moving. They're touching. Their head is up. They're making sure their ball doesn't hit somebody else's ball. They're weaving in and out of cones. Whatever you've got going on, whatever the concept is, the idea is everyone is engaged in some kind of movement the entire training session.
With those younger age groups, Coach. So let's say we got people moving. Everybody has a ball, or it's, maybe 2, maybe even 3 people with the ball, depending on where you are, where you're training. Um, do you break that down into, all right, hey, this week we're going to work on dribbling. Next week we're going to work on passing. Or is it kind of all encompassing where we're going to hit all of those details every single night because we are at that academy age or younger age? So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think you have to break that down into separate practices. There's no way you're going to get dribbling, first touch, passing, shooting, crossing. You're not going to get all that one practice. You're really overcoaching.
Right.
So I'm breaking that down. So I love Corver drills. If somebody doesn't know what Corver drill is, it's an old school thing. I'm an old guy. I get it. But for me, it's simple and the kids can get it pretty quickly. And it's all about just touches on the ball. And so I'll run that for the first 5 to 10 minutes of my practice where they're doing these Corver drills. And then we'll break off into, maybe I'll do a rondo, or maybe do some kind of a passing drill. Or maybe we'll do some kind of relay race where I'm doing, hey, we're doing dribbles, we're doing passes, we're doing first touch stuff. So we're including all of that in a relay race. You want to get kids amped up, 8 to 11 years old, tell them there's a race, especially boys. I mean, really, girls are in it too. But that gets them going. So now they're energized. And so immediately when that's done, now I'm going into a training session of game scenario where I'm adding some pressure, I'm adding some defenders or something like that. And so I think you got to work the younger ages into stuff. I think the key there is no lines, keep it simple. You don't overcoach the younger ages, but make sure you're emphasizing the technique that they're working on. And if it's wrong, you got to keep talking to them. Hey, Billy, lock that ankle. Hey, John, lift that toe to lock that ankle, man.
That a lot.
Hey, Chris, follow through. Don't just stab at it in the ground. You know, you're always coaching every single player, make sure their technique is getting perfected.
Great conversation here with Coach Dunham, Ace Football Academy, doing a little Friday footy talk, talking about training sessions, and ultimately what has happened in this episode is I'm just grilling Dunham on his training philosophy. So, we've talked about the off season. We've gotten your views on preseason, whether it's academy age, younger kids versus the older kids. Maybe this isn't fair, and we'll come back to the younger kids if we can. But this is just where you and I are living right now with those older kids, right? I think we do have a few older players who are who listen every now and then, which we encourage. But let's stick with that older age group. So now let's transition, into in season. Right, we got about 10 minutes left on tonight's episode, so I don't want to go too long here. But you've been building your philosophy. You've been building your attacking philosophy. I'm sure within that you're also building your defensive philosophy. You're talking about, hey, how we're going to defend these situations and scenarios. So, going to start with a question that is kind of different than what we've been talking about.
Okay.
Because you've talked about, we don't want lines. We don't want people standing around. How do you work? Because I know the answer for this for you, and I think it's interesting. Because I think you and I are different in this aspect. How do you train corner kicks, goal kicks, set pieces? What does that training scenario look like for Coach Dunham, especially after a Tuesday after a Saturday where you gave up 2 goals off of corners, things like that. Like, what does that look like? Because we know that when you are training those specific game pieces, it does lend itself to some people standing around, some people not involved in the game, right? Yeah. Not involved in that moment. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'll fully admit I rarely work on corner kicks.
This is why I asked him about this.
And you bring it up often where you talk about working on set pieces and, free kicks and corner kicks, goal kicks, wherever it may be. Man, I rarely focus on corner kicks, especially with the younger ages. First of all, do I even have a kid between the ages of 8 and 11 that can even kick the ball into the box, let alone being in the air.
This is big.
But of course, we can't head the ball, so I don't know how much it matters to me at the younger ages working on corner kicks. And at the older ages, again, I keep it simple. Defensively, when I'm defending corners, I love having a zone setup. It's something I've done for years. It's done me very well. We have rarely been scoring on corner kicks with this. And they all have their position of where to be. They have their zone that they're monitoring for runners coming in. But offensively, I don't know. I'm saying put that ball between the penalty and the 6-yard box and somebody get something on it. If I've got a team that is terrified to head the ball, I'm wasting my time on corner kicks. I need to focus on doing head balls, where I'm heading the ball up and over, heading the ball down, heading balls line drives, getting rid of that fear of heading the ball. So I think that's where you and I differ. I like that you brought that up, but I don't see corner kicks as, unless I had a team that I'm like, wow, I've got like 5 players that are studs at heading the ball or just quality out of the air. I might focus a little more on head balls or corner kicks. But even the team I'm working with right now, they don't like heading the ball.
Right.
So working on corner kicks isn't going to help us.
What about, so let's get, I know I focus on corner kicks, so let's get away from corner kicks. What about a goal kick situation? What about free kicks? Indirect free kicks, direct free kicks. Are you looking at that? I mean, because I think this is interesting because we know from our penalty kick conversation that you do spend some time working on penalty kicks. Sure. And you do ask those questions, things like that. So when it comes to those other quote unquote set pieces, are you spending any time on those? Like indirect free, like, here's why I asked this. And I'm asking this mostly out of a selfish reason. We got a indirect free kick from the somebody dropping the ball back to the keeper, and the keeper picked it up, right?
Yeah.
So we get an indirect free kick from like the 3-yard line, and it is just a massive cluster.
That's a disaster,
right? So like, not necessarily that scenario in particular, because nobody is practicing that scenario. No. But are you working on free kicks from just outside the box? Are you saying, hey, if it's indirect, here's our idea. Hey, if it's direct, you're trying to score versus, hey, you're playing the ball back post? Or like, are there rules or anything that you set for your teams as you approach these scenarios in matches?
There's multiple sides to this. So let's start with the younger ages. All right. The first thing when it comes to free kicks or goal kicks, I need to see who's even got a leg to even get it out of the box. Because when I was coaching my 13s, that was my biggest issue. I had one goalkeeper that had no leg, and then I had another keeper that could kick the crap out of it to, past the first line that was standing on top of the 18-yard box. So that's the first thing you've got to focus on there. When it comes to free kicks at the younger ages, again, who can even kick that ball?
Right.
And if you've got somebody, 1 or 2 kids, well, that's an easy decision to make. And I'll come back to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Older ages. I kind of know who I'm looking at for my free kicks. I'm going to ask 4 or 5 players stay after practice with me.
Okay.
So I'm not wasting other people's time. And I'll say, if anybody wants to stay and help out, please do. But I'm not going to make you stay. But I'm going to keep 4 or 5 players that I think.
Sorry, I'm writing this down. I'm not paying attention. I'm taking notes on.
Either we can work on indirect free kicks, or I'm having all of them working on free kicks just to get an idea of who I'm going to focus on for games. Now the other side of this, if I'm defending those free kicks, I need the whole team there. The very first thing I teach them is, if there's a foul anywhere around the 8 box, I better have one person standing right in front of that ball. Do not give them an opportunity to take a quick free kick when everybody's moving and getting set up.
This is where you
walk in and you stand right in front of that ball, and you make that ref tell you to move.
If you are the person that committed the foul, you also have to stop the quick play.
You see it in the pros.
Yeah.
And if the ref tells you to move back, you move back nice and slowly.
And you move back about 6 yards, and you make him and you make him blow the whistle hard, and you make him step off the 10 yard, because now he has to blow his whistle to restart.
Yeah.
And so now we're
And now while that's happening, I'm saying, all right, keeper, where's my wall? How many are in that wall? And I'll move that ball into different locations. And I say, ball's here, set it up, go. And I better see everybody doing their thing. Ball's here, set it up, go. And I'm seeing, is my keeper taking command? Is that person standing in front of the ball? And is the wall paying attention?
Yeah.
Or is everybody kind of standing around saying, well, who's going to be in the wall? Are you going to be in the wall? I don't want to be in the wall. You just do it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I differ. Attacking, I'm doing that after practice. Defensively, I need everybody. Because everybody needs to be a part of defending a free kick for me.
Agreed. Really, really great insight, Coach. We got very minimal time left. So let me just ask you, I'm going to ask you a really long question in a couple words. When you get into the season, are your training sessions, do you kind of know what you're going to do? Or are they based off of your previous match? Are they based off of last Saturday's match? Something that stood out to you? What is happening?
So off season or preseason, I write stuff in a notebook. Monday, here's what I'm working on. Tuesday, here's what I'm working on. Thursday, I have everything set up for the week, for my off season. When I'm in season, I'm looking back and saying, all right, we know our attacking strategy. We've worked on everything. Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? And that's kind of where I'm focusing throughout the season. Where do we need to improve? And where do I need to make sure we stay strong?
So, again, this is more towards the older side of things. Do you ever look ahead? Do you ever look at, okay, next Saturday, we're playing that team that beat us 3-0 last game. So here's what they did. Here's what we expect them to do. So here's how we're going to counteract it. Especially at this club level. Like, I know it's different. You and I both have some high school experience. So when you enter the district tournament or you enter the region tournament, that does come into play a little bit. I mean, and honestly, it does, right?
Sure.
But when you're in the club season where you're trying to just win a league, but do you ever look ahead and think, okay, this team beat us 3-0 last time, and they scored all 3 goals because we couldn't defend the cross, or whatever it is, right? Do you ever look ahead and plan ahead, or do you keep that focus on your squad?
A majority of my season is focused on my squad doing their thing. It's all about preparation,
right?
Being prepared, knowing your job when you come into a game. The only exception to that is, and I go back to high school, when we're playing Lexington Catholic, we're not playing the same way we do normally. We're kind of parking the bus a little bit with Catholic because they can move the ball so well around us.
Yeah.
So if I have that kind of a team I'm going up against and they're in my league, yes, I'll probably look ahead and say, all right, for the next couple practices, this is why we're doing this stuff. This is what we're focusing on. But for 99% of my season, I'm working on our attacking strategy and I'm working our defensive positioning. And I'm just drilling that in their heads. I'm all about repetition. I do a lot of the same drills over and over again. And I just make sure they understand, what are your cues? Where are you supposed to be? Where are you supposed to be when the ball is here?
And you kind of answered what was going to be my last question, but we're closing in on that 30-minute mark. Coach, excuse me. Go ahead.
Let me add one last thing here that I really didn't add in here. I'm always doing strength and speed conditioning off season and in season. Now, off season is a little bit more rigorous. In season, I'm just making sure we're maintaining where we're at.
Yeah, and I think we could dive into that conversation. Maybe we turn this training conversation into a 2 or 3 week episode, Coach, because this was a lot of fun.
I love this.
Grilling Coach Dunham tonight on his training philosophy. Maybe next week he'll reverse the script and we'll go. And then we can get into that other things like conditioning and how that works, both in season and off season. But a fun episode tonight. Went a little sideways than what we planned, but it was a lot of fun. Coach Hamilton, Coach Dunham, Appreciate you tuning in. Go kick some ace.